This is a paragraph I have given to my students to translate from English into Arabic, and I wanted to just highlight a few issues here in the paragraph and on their translation. This is a sample of the translation they gave me today, and we went through the translation, and I just like to record, some of the comments and issues in this paragraph for my students for reference. So the first thing, we should know that we have to understand the source text. Understanding the source text is like the first step, through which you can produce a good translation. And here, if you notice, in this translation, we had some issues actually even in the meaning, which is the most important element of when we assist a translation. We look at the meaning first. The accuracy, whether you transfer the meaning accurately into the target language. And if you look at the text here, first we need to ask ourselves, where are the main elements of that information? The subject, the verb, the complement. So first we have to figure out where those elements are. Especially if we have like a complex, long sentence, we need to look at those elements carefully and to see which belong to which here. So the source text says here, when asked about Mr. Khalili's situation in September, White House Press Secretary Jim Psaki thanked him for helping a number of my favorite people out of a snowstorm and for all the work you did, and said the US was committed to evacuating allies. If you look at this text here in Arabic, عندما سئل عن موقف السيد خليلي في سبتمبر شكرته السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض جين بساكي لمساعدته عددا من أشخاصها المفضلين للخروج من العاصفة الثلجية ولكل الجهود التي بذلها، وصرحت أن الولايات المتحدة كانت ملتزمة بإجلاء الحلفاء. The main elements of the meaning here, someone asked about Mr. Khalili. So who is the one who asked? And who is the one who's asked about Mr. Khalili's situation? From the context, it's very clear that for sure, it's not Mr. Khalili who asked about his situation. So it should be someone else. In the Arabic text here, عندما سئل عن موقف السيد خليلي في September, we assume that the one who is asked is a man, is masculine here. Although in the second part of the sentence, شكرته السكرتيرة الصحفية. So that one here, سئل, should agree with شكرته, but here سئل, it should be feminine form. سئلت عن موقف السيد خليلي في سبتمبر شكرته السكرتيرة الصحفية. If you look at the other translation here, شكر السيد خليلي من قبل السكرتير الصحفي. This because I received like two samples here I have. شكر السيد خليلي من قبل السكرتير الصحفي للبيت الأبيض. Still the information here is not really clear. There's inaccuracy either in this one or the other one. Ignore the highlights. Yes. Sorry. So when asked about Mr. Khalili's situation in September, White House Press Secretary Jim Psaki thanked him. So the one who was asked about Khalili's situation is House Press Secretary. So here it should be عندما سئلت. عندما سئلت. إشارة إلى الصحفية، السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض. عندما سئلت عن موقف السيد خليلي. Here we've got situation. Situation really, has different meanings and various meanings. We know that in Arabic, but I don't think this is the mawqif is the right word to use for this context, because they're talking about his situation in terms of the visa. I mean, whether they will, and the evacuation, whether the US will evacuate him or not, because we knew before that he spent a long time like tried to get the evacuation, to be evacuated from Afghanistan. So عندما سئلت عن وضع, we can say it better, عن وضع أو عن حالة طلب السيد خليلي في سبتمبر، شكرته السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض Jane Psaki. Of course, I mean, we need to check about the spelling here, the pronunciation of this name. We assume that she is rather than he. So Jane Psaki, but still we need to do our own research, as I showed you, I mean, how to research for that on Google, and to see, I mean, because there should be, I mean, some references to this lady, I mean, and if we assume that she is lady from the name Jane. شكرته لمساعدته. We use with شكر على مساعدته عددا من أشخاصها المفضلين للخروج من العاصفة الثلجية ولكل الجهود وعلى كل الجهود التي بذلها. وصرحت أن الولايات المتحدة كانت ملتزمة بإجلاء الحلفاء. If you look at the other translation here, شكر السيد خليلي من قبل. I mean, that one is fine as long as we just correct that error here عندما سئلت, because we're talking about here, I mean, the one who's سئل, I mean, who's asked is the السكرتير الصحفي البيت الأبيض. If you look at this one here, شكر, we mentioned before, and we know that first of all, Arabic is not really, I mean, does not prefer the use of passive unless it is necessary. Unlike in English, I mean, they use passive, I mean, quite often. Arabic uses passive مبني المجهول only when it is needed, like when we cannot tell, I mean, the subject, the one who did it, or so we use the passive. Especially in news, we don't prefer to use the passive unless, again, it is important, or I mean, it's necessary. So here, and you can see even we don't use, I mean, the vowel, the short vowels here, like ضمة فتحة كسرة in paper. So شكر السيد خليلي, first of all, we can say, I mean, since we know the person, even if we don't know the person, we can find a way to say شكر without the use of passive مبني المجهول. But here we know the subject of شكر السكرتير الصحفي. So شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية, assuming that Jen is she. So شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض. So if you allow me here, I mean, the student who did this translation, I will just do some editing. So شكرت شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض السيد خليلي. Of course, I mean, I mentioned this before, and I told you من قبل. I just wonder, I mean, why we need to use من قبل here. If we, I mean, already, I mean, use the active voice here, مبني المعلوم, then it's fine. That's fine. We don't need من قبل. Even if you use the passive, I do recommend using من قبل. There are other ways to say it. على يد, for example, you can say, because I see now that so often we use من قبل, and I think this is like, it's not a mistake in Arabic. It's still, I mean, Arabic phrase من قبل, but I feel that it's being used like overused, especially by translators and beginners. I mean, those starting, I mean, to translate. So شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية البيت الأبيض Jen Psaki here. Again, I mean, in Arabic, in news, we start with the position, then the name. Unlike in English, we start with the name. I mean, that's what usually happens, especially in news. So شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية البيت الأبيض جين بساكي السيد خليلي عندما سئلت عن موقفه. Here we need to use the passive because we don't know, we cannot tell who asked her. عندما سئلت عن موقفه في سبتمبر، عندما سئلت عن وضعه، sorry I'm trouble with the keyboard here، عن وضعه في سبتمبر. As I mentioned today, I mean, في September is a bit ambiguous here, في September. As if we ask about عن وضعه, about his situation in September, how he was in September. But that's not the actual the case here. Actually, she was asked in September. So, عندما سئلت في September عن وضعه، على مساعدته. So again شكرت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض جيم ساكي السيد خليلي عندما سئلت. Okay, if you notice here there's like quite distance here between the name and between شكر from شكر الشكر على, quite a distance here. So I don't recommend that. So better if we shorten that distance from شكر to على مساعدته. So how to do that? We can start with عندما سئلت في سبتمبر عن وضعه أو عن وضع السيد خليلي، شكرته السكرتيرة الصحفية على مساعدته. So we can, this is one option. عندما سئلت عندما سئلت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض جيم ساكي عن وضع السيد خليلي هنا في سبتمبر، عندما سئلت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض جيم ساكي في سبتمبر عن وضع السيد خليلي، شكرته على مساعدته عددا، منصوب مفعول به منصوب، مساعدته عددا من الأشخاص المفضلين. طبعا هنا we change the address. I mean the pronoun here, it's been changed actually in this statement. مساعدته عدد من الأشخاص المفضلين, and here we have quotation marks. So this is the exact wording of Jen. So على مساعدته عدد من الأشخاص المفضلين لدي للخروج من عاصفة ثلجية، من العاصفة الثلجية، وعلى كل العمل الذي قمت به. In Arabic it's still a bit odd here when we change the pronoun from شكرته على مساعدته then لدي. So I would prefer if we sorry, I'm just trying to think with you and show you the way how we deal with it usually when I translate a paragraph like this. As you can see, I mean, I always keep changing things, and it's, as we mentioned before, it's translation is like you have to take decisions, and in order to make the text sound more fluent in the target language. Either we remove the quotation marks here and we just rephrase it in somehow that, so it won't be like the exact statement given by Jen, but just the meaning of it. So we say without quotation marks على مساعدة عدد من الأشخاص المفضلين لديها للخروج من العاصفة الثلجية للخروج even here I mean because they're talking about a snowstorm that happened in Afghanistan. So even لديها here بالنسبة لها I think that makes a bit of sense بالنسبة لها أو مساعدة عدد من أشخاصها المفضلين أشخاصها المفضلين أشخاصها المفضلين وإنقاذهم من العاصفة الثلجية because للخروج من العاصفة الثلجية is still not really I mean that I mean for me I mean I don't feel it's really that expressive in the target text in the target language or here we can say just إنقاذ عدد على إنقاذ من العاصفة الثلجية وعلى كل العمل الذي قمت به. It's a bit strange here because مساعدته referring to that person I mean like all the work you did helping of my student yeah على مساعدة عدد then we change it to عدد من أشخاص المفضلين وإنقاذه من العاصفة الثلجية وعلى كل العمل الذي قام به. You can just change that قام وقالت إن الولايات المتحدة ملتزمة بإجلاء الحلفاء وبإجلاء حلفائها will be better here clear we can add quotation marks here ملتزمة just as it's in the source text. So let's read it again. عندما سئلت السكرتيرة الصحفية للبيت الأبيض جيم بساكي في سبتمبر عن وضع السيد خليلي شكرته على مساعدة عدد من أشخاصها المفضلين وإنقاذهم من العاصفة الثلجية وعلى كل العمل الذي قام به. We can use I mean here instead of قام به أو أنجزه. وقالت إن الولايات المتحدة where's the shadder here إن الولايات المتحدة ملتزمة بإجلاء إن الولايات المتحدة ملتزمة بإجلاء حلفائها. So let's see why yeah شكرته على مساعدة. I think now it looks good I mean quite good. The only thing I think I'm still not sure is وإنقاذهم إضافة وإنقاذهم. I'm not sure if that works since because here we have it quoted actually that which means this is the exact wording of the person who said it. Not really sure I mean to what extent we can add words here like this. Again if we remove that quotation if we remove the quotation marks here it makes more sense I mean, just to rephrase what she said. So like على مساعدة عدد من أشخاصهم. Again also we can say مساعدته عددا. If we say مساعدته then that will be عددا because it will be مفعول به منصوب here. على من أشخاصها المفضلين وإنقاذهم. If you wanted to stick to the wording, the exact wording of the jinn, so it could be we just say من أشخاص المفضلين مساعدتهم أو مساعدته عددا من الأشخاص المفضلين للخروج للخروج من العاصفة الثلجية. I just noticed now it's an indefinite in the source text. من عاصفة ثلجية. Sorry, we are back to the translation suggested by my student. من عاصفة ثلجية وعلى كل العمل الذي قام به. وقالت إن الولايات المتحدة ملتزمة بإجلاء حلفائها. I think now it looks good. I mean, as you've seen here, I keep changing things. I mean, and even if you leave, like, if you just leave this translation for a while, I mean, like for a few hours, and then you come back to it, I'm sure when you read it again, you will be able to find even a better way to say some phrases, and probably you need to sometimes to add a word or like to change a phrase or to rephrase a sentence. I mean, that's something always happening with the translators, and especially if you were, I mean, my recommendation is to do this like procedure. I mean, like to come back to the text and don't look at the source text, just look at the target text and read the target text. Because when you look at the, I mean, if you can look at the source text, but in order to get or to make sure that everything is transferred into the target language, the meaning is transferred. Because if you look at the Arabic text here, in our case it's the target text, without the pressure of the source text, you will be more able to read the text as the targeted speaker of that text or reader of the text. So to read the text with like, and as a reader, as the actual reader of the text, and you will feel, I mean, you will see how fluent the text is in target language. But if you try to compare the target text with the source text in every sentence and every clause, you will be like restricted by the structure of the source text. And that's why we see, I mean, some students starting with sometimes if you have a sentence starting with the subject, of course, I mean, in English, I mean, all sentences, I mean, that's the structure in English. I mean, they start with the subject, with the noun. Unlike in Arabic, we have two options. We have jumal fi'liya and jumal ismiya. So, but still, I mean, we see translators always, especially beginner translators, when they translate a text from English into Arabic, you notice that most of their sentences in Arabic starting with ism, to make them jumal ismiya. Why? Because they've been influenced by the structure of the source text. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to just, I mean, to record for you, I mean, those comments, and I hope you learn from those comments. And hopefully, I mean, the next submissions will be much better than the ones you've just submitted to me. Thank you.